Kirsty. I've been super lucky to live in Kenya for the past 3 years, and in that time I've tried to explore as much of the country as I could, which means I've had some incredible experiences and met some absolutely amazing people, and I wanted to share my adventures. So today we're going to Kakamega, although it's Kakamega Forest to be exact, which is a tropical rainforest. And the reason I wanted to go there is because there are more than 300 different species of birds. And I absolutely love birds. So this trip was specifically to have a go at birdwatching, which I'd never done before. And I absolutely loved it. But before I even saw a single bird, I was just completely blown away by the rainforest itself. Even just as you were driving in along the red earth road, you started to feel like you were being given a big warm hug by all these colossal trees. They were so big, and the first thing that I did when I arrived at my accommodation was to go for a walk in the forest. And I was just looking up in awe at the size of these trees. And I was completely surrounded by the calm and peace of the forest. But then, look what I saw. These absolutely massive birds. They're called black and white casqued hornbills. And really, I don't think they could look more different from the hornbills that I saw in Samburu. I'd never seen a bird like that before, and so I felt like I was off to a good start because my birding tour hadn't even started yet. It was due to start the next morning, so that afternoon and evening I just relaxed in my accommodation. I was staying at a place called Rondo Retreat, and I saw lots of blue monkeys, which I was absolutely thrilled by because I studied anthropology at university, and part of that was studying human evolution and monkeys and apes. So to see these ones in real life, I was so happy. And also, very appropriately, it started pouring with rain, which I was just delighted by because what else could you wish for when you're in the rainforest? So then my birding tour started the next day at 7 a.m. and I was so excited. It was with a company called Cisticola Tours, and it was just wonderful. I could not recommend them more highly. And they very kindly allowed me to use some of their beautiful photos, like this one, which I can't believe I was lucky enough to see, but it's a great blue turaco. And I read a description where it says it's a cartoonish bird, or in my guidebook, it describes it as a glossy, turkey-sized bird like a dowager in an evening gown, which I thought was a very good description, apart from the turkey size. And my guide was called Patrick, and I just had so much fun with him. I was absolutely terrible at spotting birds, and also I got so easily distracted by things like the trees and the monkeys. But he has the most incredible knowledge. He knows every bird call, every single bird's name. And like I said, there are more than 300 different species of birds in Kakamega Forest. It was really, really amazing. And one of the fun things was that we were using an app to tick off the birds that we'd seen. It was called eBird, and I'd never heard of that app before, not being a birder, but it was so fun. I saw 54 birds over 2 days, and gosh, some of them are just so colourful and beautiful, like this little sunbird. And in my ignorance, I did not realize that Kenya was such a draw for people who love birds. Up until I went on this tour, I had just loved birds in my own little world and been happy to see them whenever I saw them. I hadn't really thought about specifically going to seek them out. And actually, when I was in Nakuru National Park, I met some people who'd come over from America specifically on a birding tour, and they were telling me about how their grandmother had a life list of more than 700 birds that they'd seen. And I'd never even heard of the concept of a life list, but it's just stuck in my memory ever since then because I was so captivated by the idea. But the experience of being ensconced in the tranquility of the forest was something that just felt so calming. Looking up at the trees that had been there for hundreds of years, or just seeing people going about their daily business, whether it was carrying logs on the back of a bicycle, or firewood on your head, or even transporting chickens on the back of your bike. I guess it was because there was no other option, but the pace of life was so slow there, and nobody was in a rush, and that is what I think added to the ability to feel calm. The other thing was the way that the sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees and also the bird song that you could hear all around you. On the second day, the weather was much better, so we saw far more birds than we'd seen on day one, and we went on a beautiful hike to a place called Lehanda Hill, which has a disused gold mine on it. And one of the other things that Kakamega is famous for is the gold rush from the 1930s, where more than 1,000 gold prospectors came trying to make their fortune. But from the top of this hill, you had the most spectacular view across the canopy of the rainforest. And I was just sitting there for hours looking out across the trees, thinking about geography at school where we had learnt about rainforests and how they are made up. And I was seeing all the things that we'd learnt about and just thinking to myself, wow, when I was in the classroom, I never imagined in my life that I would actually be in a rainforest. And I think that classroom Kirsty would be so in awe of grown-up Kirsty now. We sat on top of the hill just watching the birds, and eventually I couldn't hold it in any longer and I had to go to the bathroom. And while I was there crouching, hoping that nobody was going to see me, I suddenly saw Patrick dash off in the other direction. And I was like, no, don't leave me. So when I came back, he had returned and he was like, oh, I saw an eagle. It had captured an animal and it was swooping away with it in its talons. So I missed that. But I saw it from a completely different perspective of panic. And 400 years ago, Kakamega Forest actually used to be part of a vast expanse of forest that stretched across from Central Africa to West Africa. But over the past few centuries, it's shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And now it's become completely cut off from the original forest that it was part of, which is called the Guineo-Congolian rainforest. Or Congolian? I really don't know how to pronounce that word. I've only ever seen it written down and never spoken it out loud before. So I'm sorry for my terrible pronunciation. But the Congo Basin is the most famous part of that forest. And it's the largest rainforest in Africa and the second largest in the world behind the Amazon. So I definitely recommend going to the rainforest if you have the opportunity. Thank you so much to Cisticola Tours for such a brilliant first birding experience. I would definitely like to go birding again. I'll put the link to their website below in case you would like to have a look. Then it was time to head out of the rainforest back to Kisumu to get the plane back to Nairobi. I was picked up by the same taxi driver I'd used to get there. And the cool thing was that on the way back we came across people who had just been at a bullfight. And he told me that this is just something that people do at weekends in Kakamega. You'll see the victors in a moment and the complete difference between them and the ones who didn't win. They were so happy. It was a very unexpected end to my weekend break, but super interesting to see. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.